afternoon. Welcome to Indus News. Live from Islamabad, I'm Naila Shuja, and these are the headlines. The U.S. military has conducted airstrikes against the Taliban in Afghanistan. Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby said the raids show Washington's commitment to helping the Afghan forces. Another official said the strikes did not indicate a U.S. policy change and were part of the over-the-horizon strategy. Indian forces have martyred 2 more civilians in occupied Kashmir's Supore town. They were targeted during a night-long operation in the Varpura area. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi will be visiting China today at the invitation of his counterpart Wang Yi. The Foreign Office says they will discuss CPEC, defense and security cooperation, COVID-19 vaccines and counter-terrorism. Brazil has registered more than 1,400 new COVID-19 deaths and nearly 50,000 new cases overnight. In Pakistan, the virus has claimed 11 lives and infected more than 1,400 people in the past 24 hours. Globally, there are more than 4.1 million fatalities and over 192 million cases so far. For more news and details, stay tuned. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back. The U.S. military has conducted airstrikes against the Taliban in Afghanistan. Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby said the raids show Washington's commitment to helping the Afghan forces. Another official said the strikes did not indicate a U.S. policy change and were part of the over-the-horizon strategy. They said the raids targeted military equipment that the fighters seized from the Afghan forces. Earlier, a Taliban spokesperson said the group now controls 90% of Afghanistan's borders. Meanwhile, the U.S. says the Taliban control about half of the country's 419 district centers. The U.S. Central Command said recently that the withdrawal is more than 95% complete. The Taliban say they will stick to their policy on peace despite being in a strong military position. Taliban deputy head Maulvi Abdul Salam Hanfi held a virtual meeting with Western diplomats. A spokesperson said Italy and Germany hosted the summit attended by the United States, the United Kingdom, European Union, United Nations, and Qatar envoys. In a series of tweets, the spokesperson said Hanafi spoke about the current situation in Afghanistan and the peace process. The spokesperson Mohammed Naim said the Taliban prefer to resolve the Afghan issue through dialogue. The spokesperson said they do not interfere in anyone's internal affairs and do not allow others to do so either. He quoted Hanfi as saying that the Taliban will not allow Afghan land to be used against other countries. Indian forces have martyred 2 more civilians in occupied Kashmir's Shopore town. The Kashmiris were targeted during a night-long operation in the western Varpura area. The forces have also suspended internet services in the area. Indian occupying forces have killed more than 400 civilians since the revocation of the occupied valley's special status. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi will be visiting China today at the invitation of his counterpart Wang Yi. The Foreign Office says they will discuss CPEC, defense and security cooperation, COVID-19 vaccines and counter-terrorism. It said the visit will boost the all-weather bilateral partnership. The 2-day visit is part of the celebrations for the 70th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations. More than 100 events have been planned, over 60 of which have been held so far. Pakistan has slammed India's state-sponsored and widespread surveillance and spying operations. Islamabad said it is monitoring the situation and will highlight Indian abuses at appropriate global platforms. In a statement, the Foreign Office said such actions breach global norms of responsible state behavior. It said Pakistan notes with serious concern recent international media reports exposing India's activities. Islamabad says Delhi is organizing a spying operation against its citizens and foreigners. The Foreign Office said India also targeted Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan using Israeli-origin spyware. It said Delhi silences dissent to commit rights abuses in occupied Kashmir and peddled disinformation against Islamabad. Pakistan has denounced India's malicious propaganda over the alleged kidnapping of Afghan envoy's daughter in Islamabad. The Foreign Office said Indian Twitter handles and websites are circulating fake pictures of the ambassador's daughter. It said several independent organizations, including the EU Disinfo Lab, already exposed New Delhi's evil intentions. It said the only domains where India has set standards are state-sponsored terrorism, illegal occupation, and disregard of UN resolutions. Pakistan's coronavirus tally has crossed 1 million, with 1,400 cases reported overnight. The health ministry says the virus has claimed 11 more lives in the past 24 hours. Officials say the death toll is approaching 23,000. They say more than 923,000 people have recovered from the disease so far. Pakistan's positivity rate stands at 5.65% after people celebrated Eid al-Adha. There are more than 53,000 cases active, with 2,500 in critical condition. Brazil has registered more than 1,400 new COVID-19 deaths and nearly 50,000 cases overnight. Globally, there are more than 4.1 million fatalities and over 192 million cases. More in this report. Experts believe following SOPs such as wearing masks and social distancing are as important as vaccines, as none of them alone can prevent the spread of COVID-19. Argentina is one of the first countries to widely use Russia's Sputnik V vaccine. It has ratcheted up pressure on Moscow over delays in the arrival of second doses. Meanwhile, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has not revised its mask guidance, even as the Delta variant sweeps the country. Doctors are worried the current surge will ultimately be worse than the 2020 crisis.
Starting really the 1st of June, we saw an escalation in our inpatient COVID admissions, and that probably the most alarming part in the beginning. It happened very fast. So we marked our surge last year, really started around September 1st, and the peak hit December 28th. So 150 days to span that from about 24 to 113. We crossed that same number in 36 days this year.
EU countries have so far donated just a tiny portion of excess vaccines to poor nations, mostly AstraZeneca shots. France's COVID advisor to the government says the fourth wave of infections will hit hospitals in the second half of August. Meanwhile, Greece says all unvaccinated restaurant and tourism workers nationwide must undergo regular COVID-19 tests. Daily contact testing will be rolled out to workplaces in Britain's food sector. Staff pinged by the COVID-19 app will keep working if they test negative rather than isolating. Over in Australia, the largest state of New South Wales has urged the federal government to divert vaccine doses to Sydney. The state has also reported the biggest daily rise in new COVID-19 cases this year, prompting a national emergency. Neighbouring New Zealand will pause quarantine-free travel with Australia for at least 8 weeks over the outbreak of the Delta variant there.
There is greater risk now from the Delta variant than there was when we opened the quarantine-free travel arrangement with Australia. It is the government's duty to keep New Zealanders safe from COVID-19, and we continue to believe that the strongest health response is also the strongest economic response. This approach has served us well to date. So too is our willingness to adapt. COVID has changed, and so we must.
The Philippines will ban travelers coming from Malaysia and Thailand. It will also tighten restrictions in the Manila area in a bid to prevent the spread of the contagious Delta variant. The United Nations says its former rights chief will lead an inquiry into abuses in Israel's and the occupied Palestinian territories. The Commission of Inquiry is the highest level investigation that can be ordered by the Human Rights Council. The three-person commission will investigate all underlying root causes of recurrent tensions. The council agreed to launch the investigation in May after Israel killed at least 250 Palestinians in the bombing on Gaza. UN's Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet has earlier said Israeli strikes on Gaza might constitute as war crimes. The commission is to set report on the Human Rights Council each year from June 2022. The United States has imposed sanctions on Cuban defense minister and other officials over a crackdown on anti-government protests. U.S. President Joe Biden said the sanctions are only the first step in the American response. He also condemned alleged mass detentions and slam trials in Cuba. Thousands of Cubans took to the streets a week ago in protest against the country's looming economic crisis. Ecuador has declared a state of emergency in its prison system after riots at 2 jails left 22 dead and 57 injured. President Guillermo Lasso issued the decree to mobilize all necessary resources to reestablish order. Lasso said the military would be in charge of controlling the prison perimeter and entry. Meanwhile, police officers would control the inside. Until now, civilians trained as prison guards were in charge of the indoor security. Prison authorities earlier suspended all activities that could put the population and administration personnel at risk. It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, shares in the Asia Pacific are trading mixed as investors monitor Chinese tech stocks in Hong Kong after regulatory concerns resurfaced. Stocks in Hong Kong fell over 1%, while mainland Chinese bourses also dipped over 0.5%. The Nikkei 225 in Japan, however, gained over 0.5%. Seoul's Kospi also added fractionally. Shares in Australia traded flat. It's now time to take a look at the weather updates from around the world. For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at Indus.News.